I'm a strong believer in strong personalities and strong opinions. I think that's how the best decisions are made. So I'm going to be welcoming a vigorous debate inside the White House. But understand, I will be setting policy as president. I will be responsible for the vision that this team carries out, and I expect them to implement that vision once decisions are made.
President-elect Obama today rolling out his national security team. Among them, Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, Robert Gates staying on at the Pentagon, Eric Holder at Attorney General, Janet Napolitano, Homeland Security, retired Marine Corps General James Jones as National Security Advisor, and Susan Rice as U.S. Ambassador to the UN, which the President-elect said he will raise to cabinet level again. So what about this rollout and what this team means for this administration incoming? Now some analytical observations from Fred Barnes, executive editor of the Weekly Standard, Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer, Fox News contributors all. Mara, let's start with you.
Well, a lot of continuity, a lot of strong people. He certainly isn't afraid to have a former rival in the cabinet with him. I think it's very reassuring. It's very centrist, experienced, pragmatic. I mean, it make a radical departure in foreign policy from the last phase of the Bush foreign policy.
Charles, he was asked in this press conference about some of the statements that he made about Hillary Clinton in the primary, that her foreign policy experience amounted at one point to having tea with leaders around the world. He said that was then, this is now.
Well, he did not raise her combat experience in Tuzla. He sidestepped it the way you'd expect him to do. He's rather nimble. But I think Mara's right about the centrism of his appointments. If he's got Clinton in the cabinet at that high post and James Jones, who are the quintessential centrist establishment figures, and he keeps on Bob Gates at defense, well, that's the kind of change I can believe in. It is, I'm sure, a disappointment to his left, but even more disturbing, I'll bet, is what he said about Iraq. That was really... He gave about every caveat he could for his withdrawal statement. As we heard earlier, he said it's only combat troops, which means he'd leave in a lot of residuals. Secondly, he said he'll speak with his generals, which is a way of saying it'll depend on conditions on the ground. Third, he said it'll have to be consistent with American safety. And fourth, he added, in case you weren't aware of how much room he wanted to actually give himself, he said it has to be consistent with the safety of Iraqis as their own government takes over. Now, that's a huge amount of space. He understands that if he blows Iraq, which I think is perceived today as a one war, if he blows it, it will poison his presidency, and he will not allow himself to be locked into a timetable which could undo all that's been gained.
In fact, Jennifer Griffin reported tonight that of the 146,000 troops on the ground in Iraq, technically 50,400 are listed as combat troops by the Pentagon. So there's a lot of wiggle room there when you start talking semantics. Fred?
Well, look, he's named Bob Gates at Defense and Jim Jones as National Security Advisor. Both of them, now Jones didn't support the surge, but both of them have publicly talked about not withdrawing American troops from Iraq too quickly. And besides, now that there's a status of forces agreement between the U.S. and Iraq, which says that all American troops should be out by the end of 2011, I mean, that's what is the governing thing now, not some statement that Obama made during the campaign. But I'll have to say, if you told me a couple of months ago that Bob Gates would stay at Defense and Hillary would be Secretary of State and Jim Jones was going to be National Security Advisor, I'd have thought you were crazy. And yet there they are. And, he elevated Susan Rice, who, Mara, you'll remember, she was rumored as a possible National Security Advisor just a few months ago. She may have cabinet status, but she's been exiled to the UN, so she's not going to be a factor. Poor Joe Biden, he's not going to be a factor either. Hillary will squash him. And, I think John Kerry really expected to be a Secretary of State. After all, you know, it was at his convention that Obama was picked to give the keynote address, that famous speech in 2004, and yet Kerry's nowhere. This is, as Mara said, this is a continuity group on Iran, on Iraq, on dealing with India, on probably on the Middle East, on Afghanistan. This is the Bush policy carried into the Obama administration.
Mara, if you're a liberal, or as they like to say, a progressive, and you're looking at today's news conference, are you cringing? Are you saying, I hope Obama can steer this ship?
Yeah, you're probably saying that. There is a tremendous amount of kind of forbearance and deference and goodwill towards Obama on the left. I don't hear the kind of griping and grousing that you would expect. Now, when they look at this cabinet, it's not an anti-war cabinet by any stretch of the imagination. 16 months has gone out the window. I think we can say that. But they do hear him say that he wants more diplomacy, he wants to spend a lot more resources on that. Now, where exactly he's going to get the resources, I don't know. But he's going to try. Look, I think that the left has so many things to be happy about that they're willing to swallow some of the things they're not happy about. But yes, it's clearly it's not a left-wing cabinet.
Last word on this one.